Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown Podcast. This is the opposition show, and this week we are previewing Boro's first away game of the season, the short trip to South East London to take on Millwall. And I'm delighted to be joined by Chris from the ChatWithChaps podcast to just get a Millwall insight ahead of this game. Chris, welcome to the Boro Breakdown Podcast. How are you doing?
Well, thanks very much for having me. After our start, I'm pretty good, and I am usually the biggest pessimist of a Millwall fan going, but even I am finding room for optimism at the minute. So yeah, keen to share some of that with you on the show.
Oh, I relate to that pessimism very hard with the Boro. But to be fair, I understand your optimism because you did start the season very well with a 2-1 victory over Norwich. How would you rate that performance then against the Canaries?
Yeah, so fun fact, before the win on Saturday, we hadn't won at Carrow Road since 1968. So it's been a long time coming. So we kind of just turn up to Carrow Road and we're like, if we can get a point, that's a great result. The first 20, 30 minutes, Norwich, big club, let's be honest, right? They're a big club, big crowd, first game of the season. They were all over us without really doing too much. And then we kind of grew into the game. We closed the first half strong, and second half we come out firing on all cylinders, and we should have probably had another goal or two. And I don't know if you saw Norwich's goal, but it was a goalkeeping error from Al. He literally kicked it against Josh Sargent's backside. So it was a deserved victory. Norwich are a very good side. I still have them to be in and around the top six, but I think you can tell they're a newly forming side under Liam Manning there. Whereas we got that little bit extra with Alex Neil's tenure. So good performance, deserved win. And we also went through in the cup last night with a 1-0 victory over Newport at Rodney Parade, which is it's been a tricky ground for some over the years.
So how was the general mood amongst the Millwall fan base given your start to the season?
It's really optimistic, which is very strange from a Millwall perspective. and it's also, even when I look at, the kind of pundits' view, we are tipped to being in around the top six, and we've never had that. We've always been there or thereabouts, but no one's ever really tipped us to be there. So there is a little bit more expectation, dare I say it, this season because of we do think we've got a good chance. And as I said, as a real pessimist, even I'm starting to believe. And I think some of the summer signings, and particularly bringing Josh from you guys, has certainly aided that.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the transfer window because obviously we are in the opening phase of the season and there is a transfer window still open. I know Chris Wilder had some thoughts about that on Sky Sports the other day. How would you rate the transfer window so far from a Millwall perspective?
I think I could speak out of both sides of my mouth here. But overall, I think I'd say it's positive. So what I mean by that is that in terms of new bodies in the building, there isn't that many, because what we did is we converted Josh's loan to a permanent. We had the same with Zach Sturge, who was on loan from Chelsea, who was a backup left back. So really, the only signings are a goalkeeper that we needed because our keeper tore his Achilles and was out for a long time, and Alfie Doughty, who is a super signing, don't get me wrong, but it's not like we've got loads of new players. I think that some of the best transfer business we've done is keeping some of the existing ones. So touch wood, everything crossed, that Japhet Tanganga is still here. He's a Rolls Royce of a defender at championship level for us, and we're very happy to have him. And then Mihailo Ivanovic, who really grew into a real vital figure for us towards the back end of last season, still 20 years old. We rejected bids of 10 million plus for him. So the fact they're still there is actually some of the best transfer business we've done. So what I meant by talking out of both sides of my mouth is I meant overall it's great, but I still think we need a couple more, because it's not like we've got loads of bodies through the door, and we lost tons of experience in the summer, the likes of George Honeyman and a familiar face to you, George Savile, who was a real leader in the dressing room for us.
Yeah, how was George Savile for you? Because at Middlesbrough, he never really impressed, and I must admit, I never really understood what he was offering Middlesbrough, but he seemed to kind of have a home there at Millwall before and after his spell at Boro. So I know he's obviously not at the club anymore, but I'd be keen to kind of know what he was like for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we loved him here. And I think if it wasn't for Luton offering him a very, very good deal, I think he'd still be here. He was never going to be the world's best player. I think it's probably fair to say. Not massively technically gifted. Certainly not the sort of player, he's not Hayden Hackney, or he's not going to progress you up the pitch. But what he can bring, in my opinion, is a real dying art in football, which is just that skill and leadership and that EQ on the pitch, knowing when to put press, when not to. Organises the whole team from the centre of the park, knows how to win a quick, dirty foul, knows when to go down when someone pushes you in the back, takes a decent free kick corner, knows how to game manage. All those different things, which I think sometimes in modern football, where everyone wants to play this tiki-taka football, get overlooked. And I think at Millwall, that is fundamental to what we do. We've never been a tiki-taka team. And it really, that was a real vital cog in the system for us. So we've lost that now with Sav. We brought in Massimo Luongo from Ipswich, who can fill that void. But a lot of fans are saying, well, you might as well just kept Sav, right? Rather than so. But yeah, I appreciate it. I know he didn't work out for you. And I think you paid 8 million for him. So
we did.
Thanks for that.
Oh God, yeah. It was in the middle of our little splurge on players that just they weren't worth the fee. I think it was, I can't remember how much we spent on Aidan Flint as well at that point. And yeah, he wasn't a good signing either. So yeah, interesting that you mentioned you still feel like you need a few additions. We were talking on the reverse podcast of this, and by the way, if anybody wants to watch that, it will be on Chris's channel. We'll link it in the description. That it's a squad game in the Championship. So, kind of looking at your squad now, what are the areas that you think maybe need a further bit of strengthening before the end of the window?
Yeah, so I think there's 3 core areas. So one is right back / centre back. So we signed a lad from Brentford who was on loan at Exeter. He's a guy called Tristan Crammer. He is my pick to be our best player, to win player of the season. He is awesome. Alex Neil turned this 6'4" centre back into a right wing back, and you'll see what I mean on Saturday. He's like a revelation. I think to get a better right wing back, you're going to have to pay £5 million plus. He is exceptional. He's also probably the best looking man I've ever seen in my life. So there's that too. I had the pleasure of interviewing him. Got all flustered. But yeah. So the challenge is, though, if he gets injured, every other right back we've got is incredibly defensive. And Alex Neil's system, as you'll see on Saturday, is basically the only width on the right-hand side comes from the wing-back. The right midfielder tucks in. So that is a real gap in terms of the squad depth. So that's one. Of course, we're panicking if Jaff leaves as well. Central midfield, our 2 starting central midfielders in Billy Mitchell and Casper De Nora, very, very strong. Beyond that, there's not much depth there. So I think, again, going back to that squad game, you need more. And I think you've got Morris and Hackney, but beyond that, similar, right? And then up top, I think Josh Corburn and Mihailo Ivanovic work really well together. Beyond that, we've got Macaulay Langstaff, who scored the winner against Norwich, but he's a very different type of striker. He's a short, nippy finisher. And then we have Kevin Nisbet, who is, I'm not sure he's going to be here much longer. So I feel like we could probably do with another centre forward that's a bit more physical to sort of complement Ivanovic and Coburn. So I'm happy with the first 11 as long as no one goes. My worry is around the depth, and I think that showed in the Newport County game last night. We got over the line, but you could tell that the players that were rested weren't going to lose any sleep.
Yeah, there's definite parallels. When I was recording the opposition preview for the Swansea game, there was parallels between us and Swansea, and I think in regards to the squad depth with us and you guys, it's a little bit of the same. We're pretty weak, as you mentioned, in that midfield department beyond Hayden and Aidan. I don't think Dan Barlaser he seems to not be fancied so much by Rob Edwards. We're actually playing young Law McCabe ahead of him, and then up front as well with, there's just no depth. There's no one there beyond Tommy Conway. There was, however, a certain Josh Corburn before he left. It's taken about 10 minutes for us to discuss him. We might as well get it out of the way now. Signed from us initially on loan, but made the move permanent in the summer. How was he for you guys last season, and how do you think he'll fare this season?
I think last season it was a case of seeing that he had potential to play for Millwall. I think he's got a lot of the qualities that a Millwall striker needs to be, which may be different to what a Middlesbrough striker needs to be. And I think that's probably why he suits us maybe a little bit more than he did you. You know, we like a bit of a battering ram up top. We like someone who's physical, puts himself about. He's not got to be the best player. We don't really care about that. So, but he was injured a lot. And that was the sort of frustrating thing. But when he did play, he looked like a real threat. So I personally was really pleased when we made the move permanent. I think rising up to 5 million is the fee. I think it's a little bit toppy. But I think if he does realise his full potential, I think we'll see value on that. But he's got to reach that. So for me, he can have an impact. I think he can get to double figures in the Championship, but he just needs to stay fit, basically. And I want to see a little bit more physicality. At times against Norwich, he got bullied a little bit, and I want to see him use his body a little bit more.
I think that was one of the problems with Corburn at Middlesbrough. I think you look at his stature and you think that he's got to be a physical striker, but I think at times he was a little bit like it wasn't quite up to that kind of, against a physical centre half. He maybe lost out a few times. I looked on FotMob. Are you playing a 4-2-3-1 this season?
No. So this
I didn't think so, because it had Corburn as a number 10, and I was like, definitely not.
No. So the way we kind of play is it's a 4-4-2,
right,
or at times a 4-2-4. In reality, we push our wingers quite high, although the right one tucks in, like I said. And then when we press, the two strikers split, and Ivanovic goes after the core centre half, and then Coburn is the one that then kind of sort of flits on anywhere else. So that's probably why FotMob says it's a 4-2-3-1, but it's not. And I think that brings out the best of Josh, because he's not the batter and ram all game. He can split that load with Ivanovic, who equally is quite a physical presence. So that's been working for us. And what's really interesting is, number one, every successful Millwall team that has ever done anything has always been 4-4-2. And then the second one is 4-4-2 is a bit of a dying art. And Alex Neil doesn't like 4-4-2. He said that himself. But he also said, I'm not wedded to a system if it doesn't get my best players on the pitch. So I like the fact that he's not been, stuck on his own methodology like a lot of managers do. And he's going, right, not a system I like, but I'm going to play it because it gets results. So, yeah, you'll see a 4-4-2 on Saturday.
Yeah. When I did my 1-2-24s before the season started, I did put Millwall just outside of the playoff places. It was between you guys and Birmingham City. Do you believe that your team will end the season in the playoffs?
That's a really hard question to ask the most pessimistic Millwall fan on the planet. I can't see us being outside. I know this is not the question you asked, by the way. I can't see us being outside the top 8. Genuinely, if everyone remains fit and everyone at the club remains as is. I think a lot of it will depend on, and you touched on this, and I think it was a spot on point, which is the clubs that have got a lot more money, what business they do between now and the end of the window and what they do in January. Because, Birmingham can go out and sign a £10 million striker in January if they want. We can't. And that's why I have got Birmingham in the top 6. I think the factor that gives us a little bit of hope, and I personally have got a 6th or 7th, I've literally the same as what you had us down as, is the core of the squad is the same as last season that did well towards the latter part, and the manager is. And you can't say that a lot for a lot of the Championship, which blows my mind, but it's the truth. And I think that gives us a slight leading edge over a lot of clubs, but we'll just have to see where we fare.
Yeah, I do fancy your chances this season. You did say stability there, and I think that is a really big thing. We saw a massive turnover of players between Michael Carrick's first season and then the second one. And it ruined us, to be honest. I know that sounds really dramatic, but you're having to plug these gaps. You're having these players are having to kind of step up and kind of bed in. And then you're playing catch up a little bit. So that stability point is really good. But yeah, I mean, I put Birmingham in there just for the financial reasons, really.
Yeah.
For Saturday's game, then, who are the key players that Boro fans should be wary of from a Millwall persuasion? Apart from Corburn.
Apart from Corburn, yeah, he'll be right up for it. I think I'm going to go with a couple that you might not even know, to be honest, because I think they're the ones that you kind of want to look out for. So the first one is Billy Mitchell. He plays what I call the boring role in midfield, which is going around trying to snap everyone's ankles, chasing around, keeping things simple. And I think the reason I say he's key, because I think if we stop Hayden Hackney, we stop a lot of good that you do. And I think that will be his core focus, will be to stop him playing. So I think that's one to watch and see how that battle goes. And then I said it earlier, Tristan Crammer. He is the most unorthodox of right wing backs, but he's fantastic. He created one of the goals on Saturday. So I think him and then finally our young striker, Mihailo Ivanovic, who, as I said earlier, we've rejected bids of £10 million plus. And you know, you'll see why. He's a very good player and only 20 years old. So they would be my three to watch.
I think this game will be pretty big on the midfield battle because we got overran yesterday against Doncaster as well. I mean, I noted it against Swansea. We kind of set up with a 5 at the back, then 2 in midfield, and then 3 kind of attackers. And I kind of feel like if you press on our midfield, you could get a lot of joy because it's pretty porous in that area from the opening 2 games that I've seen. I mean, Rob Edwards could easily maybe push the wing backs up a little bit, narrow them, maybe make it a 3 and a 4. But I kind of don't see that happening. I mean, maybe as a reaction to the game on Tuesday night, we could see that. Big question then, the big one to end the pod. What is your score prediction? Sorry, for this game.
Just before I answer that, I also think another interesting battle will be Callum Britton versus Alfie Doughty, because both really like to get forward. I rate both very highly. I think Callum Britton always did well against us for Blackburn. So he seems to enjoy the den. So let's hope he don't on Saturday, but we'll see. Score prediction. So I can see, I said this to you on the Reverse podcast, a lot of Millwall fans saying it's the worst thing that could have happened, you being beaten at home heavily by Doncaster, because you're going to be right up for it, and the classic kick up the backside on Saturday.
Yeah.
So the most typical thing will be after Millwall's start and your start to lose 1-0 at home to you. That would be very, very typical. So 50% of me saying that. The other 50% is saying there's so much optimism. You guys are not feeling great at the minute. Is there an opportunity to really make a statement in the league and to beat you quite comfortably? So I'm torn between like a 2-0, 3-1 home win and a 1-0 loss. So I'm going to give you 2 there and probably head and heart predictions.
Yeah, I said on your show, I started with 2-2 and then thought there's no chance of us scoring 2 goals. We'll nick one from like a corner and then, I think you'll score first, we'll score after that, and it'll be 1-1. And I feel like that'll be a pretty decent result, all things considered. But before we wrap up this show, Chris, you are raising money for Cancer Research UK this season. Do you want to tell Boro fans a little bit about that so they can support that cause?
Yeah, thanks very much, Dana. Yeah, so we've only been going a year as a Millwall podcast, and YouTube Chat with Chaps. That's where we are, or Chat with Chaps 89 on X. Everything we do, raises money for Cancer Research UK. Myself and the other lads on the podcast, just like many others, have been affected by a horrible disease that it is. So we decided to put everything towards that. Currently raising money for the London Marathon Shine Walk in September. So any donations, but also just even if you give us a subscribe, it always helps the YouTube algorithm and helps us do more for a great cause. So yeah, really, really appreciate you allowing us the platform to share that, Dana.
Yeah, no worries. We'll put any relevant links in the bio so that Boro fans can support what is a wonderful cause. But we will wrap things up there. Chris, thank you very much for joining me. Really enjoyed this one. Good luck for the season, but obviously not on Saturday. Boro fans, if you want to send in your predictions, please do get involved in the comments on Spotify, on YouTube as well. We will give a shout out to whoever predicts the score correctly. Only one person did last week, so let's hope more people do this week. We will be back in your ears on Sunday, but until then, take care and up the Boro Breakdown.